Hey, everybody, what's going on? Jeff Rieger, another episode of The Daily Ticket. This one for the 4th of June. It's a Tuesday. It's 2024. How you doing? Hopefully, everybody's having a great day. And I just want to jump into it because we have a great guest planned for you. A guest that's totally going to disagree with me. We're probably going to argue. We might punch each other. It's going to look like Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark in here. I mean, the bottom line is good news. I think it's great news yesterday. Jim Leyland announced that Jim Leyland's going to get his number 10 retired at Comerica Park. Going to happen on August 3rd, downtown Detroit. It's going to be a festive day. Now, there's a lot of people that say Leyland is getting his number retired simply because the Tigers want to pack the ballpark. And by then, I'm sure they're not going to be in contention, and that's going to be a pretty nice sellout. And there's already a Jim Leyland Day planned because he's a Hall of Famer, and he goes into the Hall this summer. Now, there's other people like myself that says totally deserving. Without a doubt, totally deserving, because what Leyland accomplished in Detroit, the resurgence of Tiger baseball, he's made us all give a damn about the team. Without Jim Leyland, I don't think we care about the Tigers as much as we still do. Do you remember what Tiger baseball was in 03, 02, in the 90s? It was non-existent and pathetic. Leyland comes to town in 06, didn't do it on his own. Dave Dombrowski, highly responsible as well, but had some stars, had some talent, got to the World Series, which started a decade of dominant Detroit baseball, which, despite the fact they didn't win any titles, it was pretty impressive. And I think it made people care once again. So I think it's well-deserved. I want to bring in somebody that wants to argue otherwise. His name is Evan Jankens. He works at 97.1 The Ticket. You can hear him on the air and on the Restore the Floor podcast with Stoney. And I come into the office yesterday, and I'm like, hey, dude, Jim Leyland getting his number retired. And by the way, the Tigers did not contact us for the Jim Leyland Zoom. Like, that's what I was talking to Evan about. I'm like, hey, like, Jim Leyland had a Zoom. They apparently decided not to call us. Like, we're only the flagship. But what are you going to do? So I'm talking to Evan about Leyland, and he immediately said he doesn't deserve it. So I'm like, come join the podcast. So without further ado, with the Collinsworth slide, here, go ahead. Look at that. Oh, yeah. There he is, Evan Jankens. Here, I'll move over. Usually I invite people with a link, but Evan wanted to be very close to me. So, Jenks, Jim Leyland getting his number retired August 3rd. Hold on. I hide your disgust for a second. Guy went to 2 World Series. Guy won 4 division titles. Guy managed a ton of stars. Guy forced us to care about Tiger baseball for a decade. We still care because of what those teams were able to do. He gave us the heyday of Tiger baseball where we watched every day. We cared every day. We had insane arguments about the bullpen and about lineups, all because of Leyland. Now, not totally responsible, but it was pretty much because of Leyland. And you don't think he deserves his number 10 retired?
No, absolutely not. I think that you need to have won a World Series to have your number retired. Think about this for a second, Jeff. My entire life, I have been told how great the 1984 Detroit Tigers were, right?
Sure.
When did Sparky Anderson get his number retired?
I want to say like a decade ago. Way too late. They waited until he was dead, which was a mistake.
2011, okay? Alan Trammell, beloved Alan Trammell, God around here on the baseball field. 2018, he had his number retired.
There's a reason for that, though.
Oh, he went into the Hall of Fame.
Right, but it took them a while to get him in the Hall. Now, he should have been in earlier, but hold on. One of the criteria, I believe, for retiring a number is you got to be a Hall of Famer or damn near close to one.
The number 1 is retired.
Yeah, and that was too long, too. Lou Whitaker is the exception because he should be a Hall of Famer, and if you look at his stats, he, as an infielder, is better than the majority of infielders in the Hall.
Sure. He also played like 20 years and led one statistical category his entire career in the major leagues. Think about that. For a guy that people think should be in the Hall of Fame, go look at his baseball reference. There's one number that's bolded out in his entire career.
What's the number? Hits?
I don't even remember what it is, but it's nothing that like is crazy, okay?
Better WAR than Derek Jeter.
Okay, well, Derek
true.
Jeter has like, what, 5 World Series?
He also has 3,000 hits. He's got 5 rings, and he has, 300 homers?
I'm sorry, you just can't compare the two. But back
I would
to Jim
disagree.
Leyland, okay? Jim Leyland also had seasons, what? He had 3 seasons with 90-plus wins.
Correct.
Retire the number, right? That's good enough. He also won how many World Series games that he went to?
Just 2.
No.
Actually, one. You're right. They got swept by the Giants, only won one by the Cardinals.
So if anything, you could say, I like Jim Leyland, by the way. He was always great with you. He was great with the media. He sat outside of baseball winter meetings, had cigarette after cigarette with me. I got no problem with him as a man. But what I think
Sure sounds like you do.
the Detroit Tigers are devaluing that wall out there because they want to get what? Why does he deserve to have his number retired? If anything, the number 10 that should be retired is Mayo Smith, the guy that led him to a World Series in 1968. That's the guy that wore number 10 that should have it retired. I just don't think that you can have a guy. Okay, we went to the playoffs in 2006, right? Do you remember that?
Yes.
Okay.
Did not win the division.
Nope, but then he won 88 games, 74 games, 86 games, 81 games. Okay, that is not a manager that should be out on that wall where all of these numbers, they won something for the Tigers.
Okay, so here's the guys that are retired for the Tigers.
Yep.
Feel free to comment. Charlie Gehringer.
Okay.
Won something and a Hall of Famer. Alan Trammell.
Took forever.
Yes, way too long. Hank Greenberg, same deal. Yes, you were there for Hank Greenberg?
Well, when they retired his number at Tiger Stadium.
When was that?
Greenberg Day, I don't know, in the 90s.
Wow, well, that took too long, too. He died in the 80s, for crying out loud. What are we doing here? Al Kaline, obvious. Sparky, obvious. Took way too long. Hal Newhouser, obvious.
Maybe it was Hal Newhouser Day. Because I think Juan Encarnacion hit his major league first ever home run on that day, too.
Prospect that really never panned out. Not a bad player, just not a great player. Willie Horton. Willie Horton won, but he's not a Hall of Famer.
Okay, which I don't think that you need to be a Hall of Famer to have your number retired by the Tigers.
What about Jack Morris?
How long did that take? Think about when his
way too
went
long.
Up, right?
No, and he deserves it. I mean, listen, he split time with obviously the Tigers and the Twins and the Blue Jays, but he was the biggest big game pitcher of a generation. So he deserved to be in the Hall, at least in my opinion. I know he's got like a 4 ERA, but he also deserved to have his number retired. And of course, Jackie Robinson is the other one because everybody retired Jackie's number. Real quick.
I just don't think that you get your number retired for being good.
Okay, but Leyland was great. Now, give me the beef.
He wasn't great.
Well, give me the beef. Give me the beef. Is your beef that he spent only 8 years with the Tigers, or is your beef that he didn't win a World Series?
Yes. He did not win the ultimate goal.
Okay.
He didn't do it, Jeff. And so to have.
But don't you think there are things that transcend a World Series, especially in sports? For instance, okay, he is credited not simply by himself with bringing the game back. Do you remember, and you do, remember what it was like in 03, in 04, in 05, in the 90s? Nobody cared about Tiger baseball. Leyland comes roaring in 06. He gives his fiery speech after that loss to the Indians. They end up 30 games above 500. They go to the World Series, and for a decade, and yes, there were some down years, 07, 09, 2010, I believe they didn't make the playoffs. Then they won the division 4 or 5 straight years. But without him and his managerial style and his psychology with the players and his leadership and everything that he brought, we don't give a fuck about Tiger baseball right now.
I highly disagree because Brad Ausmus also won a division with the Detroit Tigers. And I don't think that's going to scream to put him up in the rafters there.
Yeah, but Brad didn't start it. Jim did. There's something to be said about turning something that's awful into something that's great.
Sure, but Dave Dabrowski deserves his name on that wall before
I don't disagree.
Jim Leyland ever does. Look at all the great players that Jim Leyland had while he was here. You had arguably the greatest right-handed hitter in all of baseball all time, right? Miguel Cabrera. You had a pitcher win an MVP.
Well, not the first couple of years, but yes.
Miguel Cabrera when he was here? Well,
no, okay, in 06, but yeah.
Until 8, right? But also, he fell off when he didn't have Miguel Cabrera. You see those 4 years that they didn't make the playoffs and they were a mediocre team. I just think that if the Tigers, and it's only because it's the Tigers. If it was the Pistons, I would say, okay.
Well, the Pistons retire anybody. Like, they retired Dennis Rodman, who held out, didn't want to be in Detroit. Great player, doesn't deserve to be retired. They retired Vinnie Johnson, made one shot. Great player, good player, but they retired him. But you're right. The standard of the Red Wings and the Tigers is higher than the Lions and the Pistons. So that's your big beef. Like, to keep that standard up.
100%. And I said Miguel Cabrera's number should go up before his ever does. Now, that goes against my argument that Miguel Cabrera didn't win a title here, but Miguel Cabrera also won a Triple Crown, something that hadn't been done in 60 years.
And he spent the majority of his career here.
Absolutely. And I just think with all those numbers and names that you see out there, his is going to be the least deserving. And I'm going to stand with that because you know what it's going to remind me every time I see it is that they lost in those World Series.
Okay, and I hear what you're saying, but you're a sports fan. You've been a Tiger fan your entire life, correct?
Yeah, I love the Tigers.
Okay, there was a whole generation of people that could not give a fuck about Tiger baseball in the late 80s, in the 90s. Hold on a sec. When there was so many people that didn't watch, didn't care. And next thing you know, Leyland comes and people cared. They just didn't care. They fell in love. Like,
but they did that because of the players, not the managers.
Yeah, but he was the face of it all.
I disagree because I know he was the one that would talk after the game and everything. But if it's not for the big name players that you went out and got, and Dave Dombrowski going out and making these huge moves year after year, I don't think Jim Leyland has that success without all of those superstars.
Okay, but you made a comment about Brad Ausmus. You said Brad Ausmus won a division, so put him up there. Brad Ausmus won a division in 14. Okay, then they got swept by the Orioles in 3 games, Nelson Cruz and Delman Young and those guys, okay? Then he missed the playoffs, and then they had to rebuild or retool, and he eventually got fired, okay? I think that's proof that not anybody can do what Leyland did. Leyland was a master motivator. Leyland was a master skipper. I can't tell you how many times that I'm sure he extinguished problems in the clubhouse by not allowing us media in there. Like, he would give us something just so we didn't go talk to the players and get something better, and we could run right upstairs and we talk about what he gave us. Like, I think there were so many times that Jim Leyland proved his worth, and it's not just in Detroit, okay? He won a World Series with the Marlins, and he won with Pittsburgh as well. So you can't compare him to Ausmus, but also I think he's very comparable to Sparky. And Sparky, just because he won 2, right? The Big Red Machine, and here, he has his number up there. Leyland's very comparable to Sparky.
Will Jim Leyland have his number retired by any of those other teams that he managed for? I would argue absolutely not.
Not Pittsburgh. Definitely not the Marlins, despite winning.
I would argue he did as much in Pittsburgh as he did here in Detroit.
Okay, but I would assume, and I believe this, he was way bigger here in Detroit. Huge in Detroit. Now, you're right. I mean, he had great players, obviously, in Pittsburgh as well, including Barry Bonds, and they did not win a World Series. And nobody cares about sports in Miami anyhow, so, like, whatever. He had a great team that they immediately dismantled ever after he won a championship. But what he did for this fan base, like, Evan, go back to go into a game. Like, quick example. Hold on. I watched just the other day, and it's funny because you and I know about this. I watched Jared Weaver give up the bomb to Carlos Guillen, and then throw at Alex Avila. One of the greatest games ever. Verlander took a no-hitter into the 8th inning. Eric Ibar bunted to try to break it up. Verlander was all pissed off. Okay, you and I were at that game. You and I actually talked to Jared Weaver like 5 years after the fact, and he remembered everything that happened. He was still fuming about it. But if you go back to that clip, look at Comerica. Look at that ballpark, dude. That is why single-handedly he deserves the number retired.
I disagree because I think it's for the superstar players that he had playing for him at that time. Just go look around that diamond. They got anything and everything that Jim Leyland needed to make this team better. It was the exact opposite of what we're seeing right now in Detroit Tigers baseball. But they went and got the Prince Fielders, Placido Polanco's. They went and got Edgar Martinez because they thought they needed a shortstop. Now, they lost those years. I don't disagree, but they went and got David Price, and Max Scherzer was... Now, I will give him that was a Hall of Fame move, sending him down to get what he ended up getting. But I don't think that you reward a guy for just getting there. You need to win a World Series. And this might be bitter 40-year-old Evan because I didn't see the 84 Tigers, but it's always going to remind me you didn't win with them.
Your big beef is you believe it cheapens the wool that's out there. We already went over it, all Hall of Famers.
Because of how hard it was for Alan Trammell and Lou Whitaker to get up on that wall.
Well, listen, I don't disagree. I don't disagree.
Now, just because you got there, granted, you were swept in one of them, and the other one, you only won 1 game.
Yeah, but it's not about the World Series, I don't think.
It is.
No, it's about what it did to the community.
Bullshit. I'm sorry for swearing.
Oh, you can fucking swear. You're allowed to fucking swear.
That new Motor City hat that they came out with, okay, that VIN number What is it? It's all in reference to their World Series that all started with a 1-9.
They only have 4 of them.
Understood. But that is the end-all, be-all with baseball. That is why you play. That is why we bought the shirts. That's why we bought the Tiger hat with the World Series emblem on it. Because you wanted that ring, and they didn't get it. I remember in 06 when they lost, right? And Tiger players came to a Pistons game. You know what they're all wearing? Their ALCS ring. That pissed me off. That's a loser's ring.
Okay, but hold on a second. And I hear what you're saying. But if you look at the Red Wings, same ownership, right? Terry Sawchuk.
Can't get up there.
Right. Red Kelly, Nick Lidstrom, Lindsey, Howe, Delvecchio, Abel, Iserman, all without a doubt studs. So I hear what you're saying. The Illiches have always had very high standards for their team. You got to be a Hall of Famer, or you had to win and win and win and win. And I totally get it. But you're never going to meet always every criteria. And I do think sometimes there's reason for exceptions. And this is an exception. Like, for instance, I'll give you a great point, right? Like, Willie Horton was not a great player by any means. He did win a World Series. But then again, you could throw Kirk Gibson up there, right? He doesn't deserve to be on that wall. 23 doesn't deserve to be on that wall.
Also, you can't have that number retired and then guys wearing number 23.
That's a good point. But my point is, you put Willie Horton up there because of his significance for the team and for the city of Detroit. And when the riots were going on, what he meant to everybody, correct? Like, he deserves to be up there because not he was a great player, but he was a great human being playing for the Tigers, and he was fantastic for the city. You could say the exact same thing for Leyland for different reasons, okay? Leyland being a part of the resurgence of this baseball team, I think it's bigger than you want to give him credit for.
Okay.
And that's why I am willing to waive my expectations, or my standards, I should say, for what you need to get your number retired.
So Magglio Ordonez, Miguel Cabrera, Max Scherzer, Justin Verlander, they all deserve their numbers retired.
All right, so Verlander, 100%. Verlander, I don't care if he gets it in Houston, because he will. I mean, dude won Cy Young here, MVP. He won Rookie of the Year, 2 no-hitters, 100%, no issue there. Miguel Cabrera, obviously. Who else did you say?
Magglio.
Pudge. No, because these guys, as good as they were, and they were, I wouldn't mind Pudge.
But without
I'd be fine.
Guys, you don't have 06.
So then what do you do? Guillen? Polanco?
That's what I'm saying.
No.
You're
But see,
opening it up.
there's a difference, though, with the manager and the player, though.
Well, first off, the number should never be retired for a manager. You're taking away that number for what? For a guy that never stepped foot out on that field? Like, you don't retire that.
Oh, yeah, that's a different conversation for a different day. I get you. That's fine.
But I'm just saying, without Magglio Ordonez, he hit 360 one year. He led the team. He had that memorable walk-off home run that everybody's always going to remember. I just think you're opening up that door that shouldn't be opened. I think that you need to have a ring. And if you can't put numbers up there because you don't win rings, I'm sorry, that's what it is.
All right, so hit us up in the comment section. You heard Evan's argument. You heard my argument. I love the idea of retiring Jim's number. Evan hates it. He thinks it cheapens the brick wall out there in left center field. What do you think? Hit us up in the comment section. No comments today because we went too long on the daily ticket. And then whoever gets the majority of the comments in their favor, like, can we make a bet here? Like, how do you think the people are going to vote?
I hope that they haven't lowered their standards like you, just because you kind of got there and you waved your little hat like you're Jimmy Dugan in a league of their own. But it's just, it cheapens it for me. It's going to piss me off every time I see it.
All right. I know y'all hate me, so you might vote in favor of Evan, but we will bet a lunch.
Yep.
Go ahead. Comment section. Whoever gets more comments, just comment Evan or Jeff and give us your reasons why. And we'll catch you tomorrow on the Daily Ticket. Evan, thanks, buddy.
Absolutely.
All right. And he swore, so I wasn't the only guy that swore. We'll catch you tomorrow on the Daily Ticket. Bye, everybody.